Hi everybody, my name is George Torres and I am a member of Phi Theta Kappa. And for those of you that don't know, Phi Theta Kappa is an honor society for students at two-year colleges. Now, what we're doing here today is we're talking about something called Find a Way or Make One. Find a Way or Make One is a project that our college president, Dr. Leanne Nutt, is very passionate about. She is someone that wants everybody that comes through her school to succeed. And what she has noticed is that a lot of people start community college, but they don't finish. And so she's trying to figure out what is it that's getting in the way of people accomplishing their goals. You know, whether that goal is, nursing or getting an associate's degree or, just getting credits so that you can transfer out. She wants to know why is it that people are not finishing what they start. And the conclusion she's come to is barriers. There's just something stopping people from accomplishing their goals, and school becomes secondary. When Phi Theta Kappa reached out to the school and said, what can we do to help? It became obvious that the best thing we could do was to share the barriers that we went through. Most people think honor society and they automatically think, oh, well, these people are super high achievers, they're geniuses, that's not anything that I can achieve. So basically what we thought was we could share our barriers with the rest of the student body to let them know that yes, we are in an honor society, but we overcame a lot of things just like everybody else is going through. And barriers could be anything, right? It could be financial. Everybody knows paying for school is not cheap. And it could be relationships. It could be having to take care of family members. Now, mine is actually, I've had several, but the one I want to talk to you today about is an academic barrier that I had that I carried with me for a long time. So when I got out of high school, I can tell you I wanted nothing to do with school. I was so glad to get out. I did just enough, especially in math, just to graduate. And I immediately went to work. I worked for many years, had some great jobs, but that decision caught up with me a few years ago. What ended up happening was I got laid off from a great company, and suddenly I went from having that one job that people want to have because it's an office job, you're part of a big company, and then suddenly not being able to find anything similar like because I didn't have a degree to fall back on. I could say I knew how to do all these things, but I didn't have that degree that proved it. And the reason I never went to college was not just because I just wanted to work, was because I was afraid of having to do, and I know this is silly, but I was afraid of college level math. And it sounds ridiculous, especially now when I think about it, but it really bothered me. I thought to myself, I could barely do high school math. How am I going to do college math? When I decided to come back to school, I had to take a placement exam. Sure enough, I tested at the lowest possible level. It was very, very discouraging. I didn't even want to continue, honestly. I didn't even bother taking classes for the first semester that I was here apart from one Saturday class. And I figured if I'm going to do this, I have to be serious. And whatever it is that I have to do to overcome this deficiency in math that I was going to have to do it. And so I said, okay, if I got to start at the very lowest level, 0306, then that's what I'm going to do. And I took that. And then I did okay. And then I went into 0308 in a mini-mester. For those of you that do not know, a mini-mester is 3 months worth of work in 3 weeks. Think about this before you sign up for it. Because I swear if you take a math class in a mini-mester, you will wake up with night terrors about algebra formulas. Because it happened to me numerous times. And then as soon as that one was done, I figured, well, I am not done torturing myself, so I'm going to take 0310 immediately after in the summer one. Turns out 3 months worth of math in 5 weeks, still really, really hard. But I made it through all of them. And the reason was because I was in my professor's offices all the time. In fact, my first professor for the first 2 classes, I think she thought I had a thing for her because I was in her office all the time. No, I did not have a thing for you. I'm just dumb when it comes to math, and I needed help. And I spent so much time in the tutoring center here at the school that, and this is embarrassing, this actually happened. And I was sitting at a table one day, because I was in there every day, and 4 students came up to my table, sat down, and were looking at me. I looked around at all of them, and I thought, oh my, this is embarrassing. I don't know any of their names. They're clearly from my class. Why else would they be sitting here? Turns out that they were not in my class. They just saw me all the time, assumed that I worked there, and thought that I was going to help them. Couldn't help you. Believe me, I couldn't help you. And when I explained to them that I was not a tutor, they just looked at me like, but you're here all the time. Yeah, so you can do 2 and 2 on that one and figure that one out, why I'm here all the time. Now, when I finally got to college level math classes, believe it or not, I breezed through those. The reason was because all those struggles that I had doing 3 levels of developmental math in roughly a 5-month period gave me every tool that I needed to tackle the stuff that I was terrified of. If you'd have told me when I first started, having gone back to college, George, you're going to be in Honor Society, I'd have figured you were making fun of me. I never pictured myself as somebody that would be in Phi Theta Kappa. But I am. And it's something that I'm really happy about. And so that was a barrier that I personally had to struggle with. And it's embarrassing to think that for 15 years, I just gave away my age, that I was actually afraid of going to school over something like that, something that I ended up conquering pretty easily. So with that, like I said, that's an academic barrier. There's plenty of other ones. And so here to share her barrier is my fellow PTK member, Rhiannon Donaldson. Rhiannon?
Hi, everybody. I'm Rhiannon Donaldson, and I'm here to talk about something a little bit more personal. Has anyone in here ever experienced fear? I experience fear all the time. I'm a high school dropout. I dropped out of school when I was only 14 years old. And I spent probably about 16 years just perpetuating this cycle that I had learned from my parents. You know, I engaged in a lot of behavior that hurt not only me, but my family, my friends, and basically pushed everybody away from me. And then there was this miracle, and that's what I call my daughter, my miracle. She was born, and I looked into her blue eyes, and I saw her little blonde hair, and I fell in love. And I started thinking about my life. What happened in my life, I didn't want to happen in hers. I wanted a better life for her. As every mother, as every father does, I wanted something better for my child. But if I continued on the path that I was on, there wasn't going to be anything better for her. All I would do was just teach her to live in this cycle of pain. So I started changing. And change is really hard. And it's very scary. I thought, what about me needs to change? Well, guess what? Everything. Everything about me has to change. And I started considering my daughter when she grew up. What is it that I would want her to be? What type of woman do I want my daughter to be? And how do I teach her to be that type of woman? The best way to teach is by example. The best way to lead is by example. And that's what I chose to do. I'd spent a long time working in fast food restaurants, and I worked long hours, late nights, and I didn't make hardly any money. So how do I change that? How do I get a career? Well, here we go, an education. You know, when I walked onto campus, I walked into the commons, and I thought I was going to die right there. I almost cried. I had to fight back the tears. I mean, it was overwhelming. I hadn't been to school in so long. I was a high school dropout. But I made it to the advisor's office, and I cried in there instead. So she gave me a list of things to do because I didn't know what to do. I wasn't even sure where to start. So I made it in there. I talked to her. I got my list, and I started checking off things. And the next thing you know, I'm registered for classes. The first day of school came, and I was so scared. You know, there are days when I sit in the parking lot and I cry. That's the honest truth because it's very difficult and I'm still very afraid. I started thinking I'm uneducated. I'm stupid. I'm just a high school dropout. I don't want these people to know me. How can I let these people get to know me? Nobody's going to like me. But I came anyways. You know, I sat in class and I didn't understand a word that the professor was saying. I opened my textbooks and they didn't make any sense. I was going to fail. I just knew I was going to fail. But I kept coming anyways. And one day I opened the textbook and it made sense. And I fell in love with learning. I listened to the lectures. They made sense. I started learning. I started doing well. You know, to write a research paper, I didn't even know what, I had to write my first research paper, 5 pages. That was the most daunting task I have ever had in my entire life. I had to research how to write a research paper. You know, I had to use online resources. And then I had to take my stuff to the tutors because I wasn't sure if what I did was right. It paid off. I got a perfect score on that paper. And I got a little bit of confidence and a little bit less fear. You know, I never thought that I would be invited to be a member of Phi Theta Kappa. After all, I'm a high school dropout. But I did. And I never thought that I would have the opportunities that I do today here on campus. But I do. You know, find a way or make one. I have a new life today. And I'm working towards a better future, not only for myself, but for my daughter and potentially my grandchildren. Because I'm breaking the cycle. I don't have to perpetuate that in my life anymore. So today, I stand before you, the Vice President of Leadership of Phi Theta Kappa, and that's a miracle. Phi Theta Kappa is dedicated to student success. They have helped me to grow and to stretch and to become a well-rounded individual. We focus on our hallmarks: scholarship, leadership, fellowship, and service. And I found that these hallmarks has helped to develop the whole of my being. I'm very fortunate to be here today.
So for anybody that has an interest in Phi Theta Kappa, please visit our website, PTK-Tomball.org, for more information and schedule of our events. And with that, just want to say thank you.
Thank you.
So you might be wondering what we're doing here today and why. We are working with Dr. Nutt, our college president, on a project that we called Find a Way or Make One. And she's really excited about the project. She wishes that every student succeeds and graduate with an associate or certificate or whatever you want to achieve in your life. But she realized that there's always obstacles and struggles along the way. And that's why we're here today. We want to share our stories with you, our personal stories, to tell you that you are not alone. Everybody has a story, everybody has a struggle, but we can always find a way or make one. My name is Heba Ramadan. I am the president of the chapter Alpha Romeo of Phi Theta Kappa at Lone Star College, Tomball. I want to share with you my story of how I got to this point. About 5 years ago, I left Egypt, my home country, and I came to the United States. I only had a high school diploma, but honestly, I wasn't satisfied with only that. I knew I could do more. I knew I could go to college, have an associate degree, or whatever degree I want, especially with all the opportunities that I saw here and all the great resources that you can use. So I had to find a way or make one because I had one thing in my way. I had a language barrier. Yes, I took English in high school, but first of all, it was British, and it was nothing like the real life. So I knew I had to find a way. And the first year I came in here, Houston Community College, let me start. Houston Community College offered ESL classes. And for you who don't know what an ESL class is, it's an English as a second language. They basically work on your vocabulary, grammar, enhance your conversation ability, and so on. So basic stuff. I took it for 2 months, and I felt a little bit confident. And I decided to go to University Park and take the Compass test. And let me tell you something, that day, or that test was the longest test that I have taken in my entire life. It took me 5 hours to finish that test. Yes, but as many of you might know, they could just keep giving you question after question until you can't answer anymore. So I got the results back, and the next day I went to an advisor. I was really happy, very excited. I'm gonna start college classes, yay! I'm gonna, finish my degree. But as soon as I got there and I talked to her, and she said, wait, you have to take 1 year of developmental classes. That's 1 year of non-credit classes, 1 year that doesn't count. So to tell you the truth, I felt that my confidence in myself just went through the window. I was going with my confidence here, and now it's right there. Because I thought I was great. I thought I could do it. I thought I was up to the challenge. I'm ready. But that's not what they said. So the first year I had to push through. Somebody told me about the tutoring center. I practically lived in a tutoring center. I was there for math, reading, and writing. I went to study groups, but that wasn't enough. When I went home, I had to translate my lectures in English and memorize the new vocabularies. So you can imagine how long it took me to finish one lecture and one homework. But I kept doing this, and the year went by. I did very well in my classes, and I regained a lot of my confidence back. It was a very nice feeling up until I had to take a science class. Now you can't convince me that science classes are basic English. They're not. They're not. And here I am struggling with basic English, and now I have to take a science class. That was really hard. The first class that I took was an introduction to chemistry. I bought the book early. I read some chapters, thinking that I'm going to be able to understand it. And then the first day I went to class, I came outside of the class crying. I walked to my car crying. And I just did not understand a single word that the professor said. We went to the lab, and I had no clue what the instruments were named. I didn't know anything. I didn't know how to read the instructions, nothing. So that night, I thought of dropping the class, but then I talked with my husband, and he said, so what? It's the first day of class. It's gonna get harder and harder. And that right there made me realize that if I want to finish college, then I have to push through this. I have to get over the obstacle. So I knew I had to make my own way. And in this case, besides going to the tutoring, besides going to my professor's office and asking questions in class, I found this really nice lady in class, and she was doing some classes for her master. And then I asked her, could you be my study partner? And she said yes. And she, in fact, became my lab partner. We started studying and studying up until that first test came. I was so nervous that I'm not going to even pass that test. But I managed to do very well on it. And then the second test came, the third test, and right before the final we were reviewing, and my professor, she pulled me aside and she said, Heba, I have seen how you grew in my class. I have seen the hard work that you put in the class, and I'm really glad to tell you that you have the highest grade in the class. So that right there just made me the happiest person on earth, because I saw myself crying like a baby the first day, and now being on top of my class. So that was just very, very self-satisfying. I felt that I could do anything I want to, or I choose to. I realized that I could do anything I choose to if I put the hard work, and even more. So I know a lot of us might think that success is a straight line, but it's not. Success is lines going everywhere. You have to go over bridges, you have to go under bridges, and my success was a product of my struggle. Now that you've heard my story, I would like for you to hear my friend Lindsay, who has an amazing story about how she overcame her obstacles.
Okay, so like she said, my name is Lindsay, and unlike Heba, my struggles, her struggles were nothing that she could control. She couldn't control, not understanding. She couldn't understand the English. She couldn't control any of that. All of my struggles were self-inflicted. I graduated high school when I was 16. I was homeschooled. My parents were very, well off because I was the baby. I had the world in my oyster. I had all of these things going for me, and I had my first year of college done when I graduated. So there was this, there's one little problem. There's always a little problem. How many of y'all have been in a relationship? You want to raise your hand? Yeah? A relationship? Okay. So my relationship was not a good relationship. Actually, it was really awful, and he was, as my friends would like to call him, a loser. But you know, when you're 16, you don't know that. So anyway, I graduated from high school. We moved in together because I thought that was the best idea at the time. And we started at community college. So a few weeks into the semester, he decided he didn't want to go to school anymore. Well, I'm not going to wake up every day at 8 o'clock in the morning while he's crawled up in bed, you know, his head all up under the covers, and drag myself to school at 8 a.m. So I stopped going a few weeks after that. And luckily, you know, I did have enough smarts to drop the classes before they failed me, because I would have, you know, failed for the first semester. So anyway, I started, you know, thinking about what do I want to do. I wanted a little more of a challenge. So we moved to Huntsville to go to Sam Houston, and I started taking classes there. We were living together still. And all this while, you know, my parents were absolutely not supportive of, you know, me living with my boyfriend. It was not good. They knew from the beginning that it was going to hinder my education. It was going to hinder any goals that I had set for myself. So I was going to Sam, and I met this counselor because, you know, after about 3 years of being together, all of the habits of his that I thought were okay, they just, you know, every day going through those same things that you don't like, they just get to you. So I went to a counselor. Not for that. I went to a counselor about what I wanted to do with my education. You know, where do I want to go? I've taken all these classes, but I have nothing to show for it. Well, it ended up being about him. And the first hour, it was an hour session, and she nailed him to a T. She knew exactly what kind of guy he was, how he was going to be, how my life would be if I stayed with him. And I was just like, no, I'm not having any part of this. If some stranger can tell me how my boyfriend is, then, you know, there's obviously something wrong, because I couldn't see it. Anyway, so I went home, and he was sitting on the couch, and the dishes were in the sink, and he hadn't done anything all day, just, you know, a lazy bum. So I told him, I was like, you know what, you gotta get your stuff, pack it up, go to your mom. Go live back with your mom. I can't do it anymore because we're not on the same place anymore. I have goals up here for myself, and you're just gonna drag me down. So one of the main reasons why it was such a conflict and why he was such a hindrance in my education was his drug problem, which I kind of put on the blind side because, you know, I didn't want to believe that he was into all that. Well, he was. And I'm, you know, pre-nursing. If you have any kind of misdemeanor or felony, the Texas Board of Nursing, they see it, and you'll never be anything in the healthcare facility, anything. Anyway, so I was driving to see him one night. My parents didn't know this. I was driving to see him one night on my way home at 3 o'clock in the morning. I got, you know, an hour away from home, and I hit a deer in my car. Well, it wasn't really that big of a deal, but they had to, you know, take my car to the wrecker, inventory all the stuff in my car. Luckily, my uncle owns a body shop, so this wasn't, you know, anything outside of the family, but my dad's going through the inventory, and he finds a dime bag of weed in my car. Okay, well, it was not mine, okay? I've never even, like, smoked a cigarette. But it was his. He had borrowed my car, towed his friends around. That was an issue. That was my breaking point. And then, you know, the counselor lady letting me know all of these things about him. So anyway, after he's gone, he's out of the picture, I obviously, you know, gain a little more respect for my parents because I've done this for myself. They didn't keep me from being with him. And, you know, I think I have everything going, right? And I'm at SAM. And then the SAM nursing program 2 years ago is not accredited. And if it's not accredited, yeah, you can go and you can graduate, but no one's going to hire you because they don't have the certain standards set in place, you know, as all the other schools. So you're not recognized as a nurse. So I have another obstacle to overcome. And I didn't know about Lone Star when I graduated from high school because I went very small town, a long ways away from here. Anyway, so I did find out about Lone Star. It turned out that I had everything shy of 1 semester of my prereqs done for the nursing program. So I applied to Montgomery, to Lone Star Montgomery, because I live in Conroe, and I didn't get accepted. But my grandma lives in Tomball, so I applied to Lone Star Tomball nursing program, and I did get accepted here. That's not to say I don't still have, you know, obstacles to overcome. The nursing program is very hard, but I have found a very welcoming family in Phi Theta Kappa, you know, a well-rounded, like-minded people. You know, there's activities going on, and it kind of gets you involved in everything. So where's Heather? Come on here. So like I said, I found a really welcoming family in Phi Theta Kappa at Lone Star Tomball. I'm not going to say I never thought I would be here because I set myself up to be here, but I just had a really bumpy road along the way.
For you, or Let's just start. For those who don't know what Phi Theta Kappa is, Phi Theta Kappa is an international honor society for two-year colleges, and we're really committed to student success. You can always stay in touch with Phi Theta Kappa through our website, PTK-Tomball.org. You can check out all the information about Phi Theta Kappa, and you can always stay connected with us through Facebook and Twitter, which is, the links are provided on the website for you. For those students who are coming here to Lone Star Tomball, we hope that we see you around, and please feel free to stop us, ask us any question that you have. Another way to stay in touch is that you can come by and visit and check out our bulletin board that's outside of South 257, outside of the PTK, outside of the Phi Theta Kappa and Honors office. We will have all the up-to-date events or the upcoming events as well, what happened and so on. We know that a lot of us struggled, and it doesn't have to be academically, doesn't have to be personal, it could be anything. But we together can find a way or make one. We can all use our fellow students and fellow our friends to get over that struggle and basically succeed.
And I just want to mention that, you might see our struggles or other people's struggles like, oh, my struggle's not that big, it's not that big of a deal, I'm using it as a crutch. Anything that you have to overcome to get to college is a big deal, because college is a big deal. Anything that if it's small to big, whatever you see it as, it's important. If it's important enough to keep you from coming to college or make you feel like you can't, then it's a big deal. And like she said, if you are, a Lone Star Tomball student and you do come to campus and you see us and you feel like, we don't have to talk about smart people stuff. You can just come and talk about personal stuff.
I would like to give credits to Dr. Thomas, Dr. Jackie Thomas. He has been helping us throughout the project, and we really would like to thank him very much. Thank you.
Hello, I'm here today to talk to you about Find a Way or Make One. Our president, Dr. Leanne Nutt, and Dr. Jackie Thomas have been working with us on this project for quite a while throughout the summer. They are very passionate about student success, and so they came to Phi Theta Kappa to help them with this because they've noticed a trend that a lot of people are starting college, but they're not finishing it. And they were trying to figure out, well, why is this and how can we help them? And they came up with the conclusion that, well, it's barriers. People have all kinds of issues and reasons that happen through life that make people not finish things that they begin. And they are really wanting people to finish their goals and help people to succeed. And so to do that, they decided to come to us, our chapter of Phi Theta Kappa, because they knew that we also are dedicated to student success. And one of the best ways they thought was, well, let's see, how did they overcome their barriers? And so we decided that what we would do is we would share with you some of the things that have held us back. For me, one of my issues was that I came from a family that are highly educated and very, not just have high degrees, but they also are honor students. Many of them have doctorate degrees with 4.0 GPAs. That's everybody in my family, or aunts, uncles, cousins, everybody. And then there's me. I have problems reading. I'm the only one in my family that has these kind of issues. And when I was growing up, my mother actually thought that they came up with a new grading system in school because surely nobody makes a 12 on a test. Well, except for me, or on the report card. But by the time I was in halfway through high school, they finally discovered that I had dyslexia. And that was great that I now knew that there was a real reason why I had struggled so much. The problem was, back then, they didn't know what to do to help students with dyslexia. So I was no stranger to poor grades. After I finally graduated from high school, and it was a big challenge, but once I finally did, I had all kinds of reasons that I gave myself for not going to school. First I said, well, you know, I just don't know what I want to do yet. And then I got married young and had children right away, and I said, well, you know, I just want to spend time with my family and so forth. And that's where I wanted to put my goals. But in the back of my mind, I knew that the real reason that I wasn't going to school was because I didn't know if I could do it. And I certainly was intimidated by these high grades that my own family had made. And I knew that from my past track record that I could never live up to that kind of a standard. And so I had placed on myself these high standards that I just didn't think I could live up to. And so what I did, I finally found myself in a job that I didn't like, and I knew I had to make a change. But the only way that I was going to be able to make that change was to get an education, and I knew that. Eventually, I ended up getting laid off from work. I had worked in the mortgage industry, and so when the housing industry went down a few years ago, my whole department closed. And it turned out to be a blessing because I decided at that point I was finally going to go ahead and do this. And I have a very supportive husband, and he agreed that this was a really good time to try it. And it was it was really hard because I had been out of school for so long, in addition to my other issues. And I had to do all these remedial classes, and it really took the wind out of my sail, so to speak. But I took it. When I did my first semester, I totally made just a horrible mistake. I went to my family, who are all these really high academic achievers, and said, so how many hours did you take? And I used their answers to set what I'm going to do for myself. And so I found myself my first semester of college, and I took 17 hours my first semester. And with a reading disability. Yeah, that was bad. I found myself, the way I had to make to be successful was I was up all night long, and I mean many nights a week, and I would finish my homework with just enough time to get dressed and go to school. And that is not a way to sit through a lecture. What ended up happening for me was my professors ended up sounding more like Charlie Brown's teacher, you know. All you hear is wah, 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 wah. It was bad. And I realized right away that I was going to have to learn how to manage my time better. But along with the mistakes, I did some things that were right. One of those things was I made some really good friends that were like-minded, meaning they were just as determined to succeed and complete school as I was. One of them suggested that I go and check out TRIO. And TRIO is a federally funded program for at-need students. And when I went there, I got my application, And the manager there asked me, have you been to disability services yet? I said, what's that? She's, aha, let me walk you down there and help you get an appointment. So she walked me down there and helped me schedule my first appointment. And disability services, I found, was just as easy to work with as TRIO was. They just walked me through step by step the things that I needed to do and how to get my testing, and they were able to get my disabilities documented. And from there, they were able to get me a scribe, which is someone who can go in and take notes for you, and the use of a voice recorder. And these were two tools that I used that have really helped me to overcome some of my challenges that I have. I put a lot of hard work into it, but along with these tools. But this Lone Star College has a lot of tools in place for student success. And I encourage you to, if you have something that you need, look into finding a tool that will help you. We have tutoring centers. We have, the disability services. Just check out the tools that you have. We have counselors. Do it, whatever it takes to overcome your barriers that you have. And that's my story of how I overcame some of my challenges and my barriers and how I found a way or made one. Now I would like to introduce you to my friend Sarah, who is also a Phi Theta Kappa member, and tell her about her story.
Thank you, Stephanie. Thank you, Stephanie. About 11 months ago, I took one of the hardest and most important tests of my entire life. This test that some of you may have to take was the HESI, and it is the test that you need to take in order to get into nursing school. So let me back up just a few months. In early July of that year, I was in a car accident on my way to work. Now, it wasn't a major car accident, but I did suffer from severe whiplash. I thought whiplash is not a big deal, I'll get through it. Well, the pain was so bad that I had to go to the urgent care center. I went there and they took some x-rays and they told me that I had scoliosis. Now, it wasn't major, it wasn't too bad, but where my neck should have been slightly curved, it was actually rigid and straight. And this was complicating my whiplash and putting me in a lot of pain. So they gave me some tramadol and some muscle relaxers and they sent me on my way. So it took me a while to work through and get through my pain. Any little thing that I did would aggravate it and I would be in a lot more pain, and it was a struggle for me to work past my pain. But I finally did it, and I finally got on the right track and was coping well. But then test day was approaching, and the pain came back, and it was so much worse than it had ever been before. I couldn't stand. I could hardly walk. And it got to the point where I just broke down crying at work. I called all my co-workers, but no one would come relieve me. I told them what I was going through, but they all had excuses and didn't want to come relieve me. So I ended up shutting down the shop, and I had my parents come pick me up, and they took me to the urgent care again. And this time I was diagnosed with what is called myofascial pain syndrome. What this is basically a recurrence of a previous injury. So what I was experiencing was my car accident injuries all over again, this time just worse. And it was all brought about and triggered by stress. My stress and worry about taking this huge exam for nursing school, it's huge, was just terrifying me, and I couldn't cope with the stress, and I was in a lot of pain. So the doctors gave me some hydrocodone and some muscle relaxers. Let me tell you, both of those medications will make you drowsy, and together they will definitely put you to sleep. So when I went into test day, I was very tired and also still in a lot of pain. But, I'm a good test taker. I thought I can do this. So I went in there and I took the test. Well, there are 8 sections on the HESI. 6 of them I passed with flying colors, and you need a 75 on each section to pass. On the other 2 sections, one of them I scored a 72 and the other a 73. 5 cumulative points away from passing. I was completely devastated. All the pain I went through, everything I pushed through, and I failed. So I signed up to take the test again, this time in December. And I was able to cope with my pain and work on my stress issues. So by the time when test day came around, I was feeling pretty good. I'd studied extra, and I thought, I've already taken this once. If I could score that close while being in an incredible amount of pain, I got this. But maybe it was this way of thinking that was my downfall. Because on those 2 sections that I hadn't passed the first time, one of them I barely passed, and the other I did even worse. I felt like a complete failure. I was mortified. I didn't know what to do. I've taken it twice. What do I do? Now, the school that I was trying to get into, that I had revolved all of my prerequisites around, will only allow you to take this test twice. Not twice in a semester, and not twice a year, but twice in a lifetime, which meant that I could never go to this school ever. Fortunately, there are 2 tests that you can take to get into nursing school. One of them is the HESI, and the other is the TEAS. Now, some schools will accept the HESI, and others will accept the TEAS. So what I had to do, since I couldn't pass the HESIs, I had to find a school that would accept the TEAS. So I spent a lot of time looking for a new school because I really, really wanted to be a nurse. I did not want to give up on that. I was going to find my way to become a nurse. So I found a school that would accept the TEAS, and I started studying for it. And this whole past summer, I studied just as much as I could. I took my textbook to work with me, and I would study behind my register when I didn't have any customers. And I'm losing my train of thought.
You're doing good.
So over the whole summer, I studied as much as I could. I brought my textbook with me to work, and I would study behind the register when I didn't have any customers. I studied day and night, right before I went to sleep, and when I got up in the morning, and in between activities. I was also working 3 jobs. I was studying in between all of my jobs, and I had a really full plate, but I was not going to let myself fail again. This was my last shot to get into nursing school, and I was not going to fail this time. So a couple months before I took my test, I was at work at 6 o'clock in the morning when I got a phone call from the hospital where my grandfather was, and the doctors were saying, "Come now." Well, I didn't make it in time. And this was one of those situations where I knew my grandfather was sick. I knew that he was in the hospital. I knew he wasn't doing well. I knew he just had surgery. And yet, I kept saying, "I'm too busy. I'm working. I don't want to go." And I made all these excuses, and I never went to go see him just because he wasn't my favorite person in the world. So those next few weeks, I dealt with an incredible amount of guilt. I felt like a horrible person, a horrible granddaughter, and I didn't know how to cope with that. And so all of my studying got put off for about 2 or 3 weeks. By the time I was finally able to come to terms with myself and realize that my grandfather knew that I loved him, it was okay. By the time I was finally able to come to terms with myself, I lost 2-3 weeks. And by the time I came back to studying, I didn't know where I was. It sounds silly, but once you lose your momentum, it's hard to get back on track, and it is hard to get back to where you were. I had to tell myself, I'm just going to pick up the book and I'm just going to start reading. So I took a bunch of practice tests. I took them over and over and over, and again I was taking my textbook to work, and I studied there, and I would study flashcards on my iPod, and I did everything I possibly could to study. Well, I took the T's last month, and on this test, you need a 64 cut. On this test, you need a 64 or higher to pass. But to be competitive, your scores need to be in the upper 80s, low 90s. So it was a little daunting, but I went in and took the test. And not only did I pass, but I scored an 89%. I scored in the 98th percentile in the nation and the 99th percentile in my program. And if it had not have been for my past failures, I would not be as confident and as strong as I am today. And I would like to share with you all that I will be starting nursing school next semester. And now that you've heard my story, I would like to pass it over to my friend An.
How many of you have been told that you were not able to achieve something? And you know, those words really hurt when it comes from a relative, a good friend, or even anybody. So in the 8th grade, I was failing the 8th grade, as sad as it was. So my counselor intervened and told me that I would be not able to make it to college. You know, those words actually hurt. But look at me now, I'm in college. Prove it wrong. But as a little story, I grew up in San Jose, California, which is in the Bay Area. As you know, in the Bay Area, there's a good side and there's a bad side. Unfortunately, I live on the bad side. My house got robbed 2 times. You know, there's gangsters, drug addicts, people who even made drugs. I remember I was walking out of school one day. One of the people, one of the students got point blank, got shot on campus because he messed with the wrong people. So, you know, I grew up in that environment. I made bad friends, I made bad decisions. So, you know, growing up, when I reached the age of 16, I thought to myself, why should I continue this lifestyle? How will this actually benefit me in life? You know, breaking the laws and running away from the police officers and fearing the law. So I made a change. As you know, I had to make another way. So I was thinking, what should I do? Because, you know, I affiliated myself with bad people. So I was like, you know what? Let's make good friends. So I made good friends that actually studied and actually did their homework. It was a good change. But the bad part was my bad friends knew what I was doing. So they intervened and then just went to a complete mess. So I had to make another way. It was so annoying. So actually, I moved from California to Texas, and that's a big change. So right now, living with my grandparents and then going to school. I went to Klein High School. It was a really big change because number 1, it was huge. Number 2, there was a lot of white people. And number 3, I grew up in an environment that was just horrible. So I had to try to fit in. So I had to make another way, which was pretty scary because I'm a shy person. So I was thinking, let's go make intelligent friends. You know, those people with giant textbooks and just intellectual words. You know, I don't understand. I still try to work with them. But yeah, so, you know, as you finish high school, you apply for colleges. So I applied for HBU, St. Thomas, any local universities within Houston. But what really hurt was, as each letter came back, it said rejected, 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 another rejection. I was like, oh my gosh, you know, that really hurts. I was thinking, why should I let my counselor dictate my life? Why should I let my counselor say that I will not be able to go to college? So I had to make another way. So So I looked around. I was like, you know what? I'm a child Lone Star. And Lone Star has been a big opportunity for me because now I'm in a nursing program and also I'm in Phi Theta Kappa. Just a little bit about Phi Theta Kappa is that so we're an international honor society for two-year colleges. So what we can provide for you guys as Phi Theta Kappa is scholarship, fellowship, service, and leadership.
For those of you who are interested in Phi Theta Kappa and would like to know more, I'd like to invite you to visit our website. It's www.ptktomball.org. And I'd also like to invite you to check out our Facebook page and our Twitter page.
And if you happen to see us walking through the halls, if you are actually going to campus at Tomball, please stop and say hello to us. And if you have any questions, take the opportunity to ask us. We would love to help you. Also, you can come by and check out our bulletin board in South 256, and it'll...
7.
Oh.
7 is close enough.
Okay.
257.
Oh, 257, the bulletin board, and see our list of upcoming events.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Why am I clapping?
2, 3.
Phi Theta Kappa, 1 chapter, 1